Welcome to the Stronger Than Steel podcast with your host, Austin Davidson and John Keir, talking Steelers all the time. Now, here's Austin and John.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a solo edition of the Stronger Than Steel podcast, part 2, if you will, of Season 6, Episode 31, early on a Sunday morning, talking about Steelers and Seahawks and looking ahead to the Steelers bye week, Week 7 of the NFL season underway. And the Steelers are 3-3 after defeating the Seattle Seahawks 23-20, needing overtime to win, but getting the win nonetheless, and digging out of that 1-3 start that looked like the Steelers were going to be left for dead from. So as we are actually pretty much approaching the end of the bye week and the start of Browns week part 1, I wanted to take a look back at this win over the Seahawks and kind of what the Steelers need to do going forward if they want to continue to improve and potentially be a contender in the playoff race in the AFC. Because even though they're at 3-3, they're not getting a lot of talk, and I think that there's good reason for that. But why don't we circle back to this game? Let's kind of recall, no Russell Wilson in this game, Geno Smith making his first start in 4 seasons, and the Seahawks defense that had been one of the worst, if not the worst statistical defense through 5 games in an NFL season, giving up a ton of yardage, and a team in a competitive division in the NFC West that was pretty desperate for a win. So the fact that the Steelers were able to come away with a win, even if it was of the narrow variety, was pretty important. And as far as the way the game broke down, I mean, it really just came down to the stars like TJ Watt and Cam Hayward. Obviously, Watt showed out in overtime, having both of his sacks in overtime, knocked down a pass, forced that fumble that was recovered by Devin Bush. The defense was not perfect, just like the previous week against the Denver Broncos, but again, did enough to get the job done, sacking Geno Smith 5 times, and obviously forcing that fumble in overtime. Just 20 points against, but the defense still... There were a lot of issues with the defense, and they were actually not what you might have expected. So going into this game with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, 2 dynamic deep threats for the Seattle Seahawks, you figured the Steelers would try to do their best to take away one of those 2, and they actually did a pretty good job in limiting both receivers. They bracketed both guys at times. Metcalf was the go-to receiver, generally. Actually, no. Metcalf and Lockett finished with the same amount of targets, but Metcalf converted more of his. But the Steelers were able to keep a lid on things when it comes to those 2. Just a total of 8 receptions between the 2, and a little over 100 yards, I believe, on the day. Let me calculate this because I'm just horrific at math here. But that's a total of actually 93, so 8 receptions for 93 yards is a good day for the defense in taking those guys away. But as we've talked about all season, the Steelers have had issues when teams go to their secondary options. And really, the passing game didn't move the ball a whole lot for Geno Smith and the Seahawks, but there were a few plays through the passing game that gained more yardage than they should have. One of which was a 41-yard pass to Gerald Everett on one of their touchdown drives. That involved some missed tackling, and we have a lot of issues with missed tackling in this defense, including another dump-off to Travis Homer that gained 27 yards, but outside of those 2 plays, the 41-yarder and the 27-yarder, which both involved missed tackles, the Steelers' defense did a really pretty good job making sure that the big guys in Metcalf and Lockett didn't beat them, and that the Seahawks would have to work a little bit harder to get their yards and points, mainly through the ground game and other secondary options. And we just touched on the secondary options had a couple of big plays, but overall, nothing too crazy. The issue with the defense was the ground game. Just an overall failure from the defensive front and really just everywhere. on the defense because the defensive line was getting pushed out of position. The linemen were in terrible spots. The linebackers and safeties who were coming down in the box were not in their correct run fits. And to make matters worse, not only was everyone not in the correct position, they were also missing a ton of tackles. I believe PFF dinged Pittsburgh for 14 missed tackles, and I think Steelers Depot had them dinged for 20-something. So however you want to cut it up, even if you're looking at it in a conservative fashion, this team missed way too many tackles. And oftentimes they were missing tackles on the same play. The 27-yard reception to Travis Homer, I believe. I think Robert Spillane, Joe Hayden, and I think Terrell Edmonds all missed tackles on just that one play. And if I'm not mistaken, that was a third down play where if he had been tackled originally, he would have been short of the sticks. So just instances of not playing clean enough football helped the Seahawks stay in this game. And it was a big part of why the passing game had better numbers for Geno Smith than they probably would have overall. But at the end of the day, like I said, the pass game was okay, but the running game was just terrible. And most of it actually came as a result of the second half. The Seahawks scored on their first 3 possessions of the second half. And, to their credit, they identified what the issue was with their offense, and they weren't getting anything going in the first half because the Steelers were playing a lot of too high, again, trying to take away the deep passes, so they adjusted and went to the run game, and the Steelers' combination of poor run fits, getting pushed out of position, and missing tackles led to the first touchdown drive for Seattle of 10 plays, 75 yards, where all but one play was a running play. There was just one pass in there, so 9 runs on the 75-yard drive, including an explosive run by Alex Collins of 21 yards on the third play of the drive. But they were just getting chunks and chunks of change on the ground on that first drive. And then after the Steelers were able to respond with the field goal, but they, again, went right down the field after a nice kickoff return and utilized this was actually where they utilized the 41-yard reception to Gerald Everett. There was also a 14-yard pass to Tyler Lockett, his second longest reception of the day. And then on the third drive of the second half for Seattle, they again had a 14-yard run and then a 26-yard run by Travis Homer. So just issues upon issues. And, if you're going to let a team back into the game, you probably prefer it to be the running game just because, pass games are typically far more explosive than the running game, but the Steelers were allowing long runs so consistently and not getting those negative plays that it really just didn't matter. After the Seahawks made it a 17-all game, the Steelers did a much better job of holding the Seahawks running game in check, but by then the damage had been done, the game was tied, and it was in the balance. So really a disappointing effort from as far as the tackling and the run defense as a total. I know that the Seahawks were, you were worried about the Seahawks deep threats, but that doesn't excuse the poor tackling and the failure to complete your responsibility on running plays. It's an 11-man unit on running plays where every man has to do their job with run fits, taking up blockers if you're two-gapping, and just way too many issues where 1 or 2 or 3 players were out of position, and then again, the compounding of that with missed tackles just made things a lot worse than it needed to be. And going forward the rest of the season, this is a defense that is clearly missing Stephon Tuitt and Tyson Alualu more and more every week, and not having those guys has been quite a big detriment for this run game, and they've got to find a way to improve. And again, it starts up front with Cam Hayward, who's doing well, but he also had some plays where he wasn't great in run defense on Sunday. So hopefully over the bye week, the Steelers have had added importance and placed added emphasis on stopping the run, because they have done a better job in recent weeks. Outside of one pass to Cortland Sutton, I think the last 3 or 4 weeks, they've done a much better job in defending the deep pass. So This defense, I think, is on the right track, but there are still some issues that hopefully they were able to get fixed over the bye week, or at least improve upon. One other thing I wanted to mention, in terms of the overall turnover numbers, the Steelers aren't really forcing many compared to what we're used to over the last few seasons. So right now the Steelers have forced just 5 turnovers through 6 games. That puts them on pace for what, 16? 17, somewhere between 15 and 17 turnovers. They haven't forced more than 1 in a single game yet. And after finishing second in the league in turnovers forced last year and by far tops in the league 2 years ago, they really need to start doing a better job of getting the ball from their opponent. And TJ Watt did a great job to force that fumble last week. But again, this team just really needs those big splash plays from the defense. And they've improved in some areas, but again, just not coming up with those big plays consistently enough. Though I will point out in this game, I think some of it can be attributed to bad luck. There were a couple forced fumbles near the end, including that wild final play of regulation, second to last play of regulation, where James Pierre forced the fumble on DK Metcalf, and just a little unlucky at times. And I think that, generally, you think about it, the pendulum should swing back the other way. I think the Steelers will be able to come up with some more turnovers. Really, the guy I want to look at in terms of the turnovers is Minkah Fitzpatrick. I've been pretty hard on him this year, and I think that he's been playing better the last couple weeks outside of missing tackles, and I think that those turnovers will start coming. I do have other concerns about the defense, but generally speaking, at the bye week, I think the defense has done a good job. I'd call them an above-average defense, not the elite unit that we were all hoping it would be, but again, they are missing 2 of their starters right now. No idea when Stephon Tuitt is going to be returning. Doesn't sound like he's been activated coming out of the bye, so we'll see. You have to think he needs probably the whole 3 weeks once he gets activated. I mean, he hasn't practiced in since the week of the playoff game in January. I mean, it's been a while since he's had a full legitimate practice for the Pittsburgh Steelers, so they need him back for sure, but the rest of it, Carlos Davis is coming back. I know he's more of a pass rusher, but maybe just another body in there to help things out. And then, a big part of it is just making the tackle, and that's, when you have both of those issues combined, it makes things a lot worse. If you can just become a more sure-handed tackling team, it should help. And this team didn't miss a ton of tackles last year from what I remember, so I don't know. Just hopefully the bye week, maybe guys are dealing with more bumps and bruises that are affecting their tackling ability. Just get healthy over this week and then get ready to go. But all in all, this is a slightly above average defense at this point. Right now they're 12th in points against in the NFL. This is they're going to face a stretch outside of the Browns game the next 3 games. Actually, you know what? Even with the Browns, with all their injuries, the next 3 weeks, they should really show us if they can turn the corner. So it'll be a big few weeks for them. On the other side of the ball, the Steelers offense, they did enough to win the game. I don't know how much more we can expect from this team, but I do know that if they want to go where they want to go, they do need to do a lot of things better. Again, 23 points needing overtime, where the turnover essentially gift-wrapped them the winning drive. Just 1 turnover on the day, that bizarre Ben fumble where he was pump faking it. That actually has happened one other time in his career. It happened in a game in New Jersey against the Giants right after the Hurricane Sandy in 2012, where Roethlisberger was throwing, decided to pull it back, but was unable to stop the process, and the ball squirted out of his hand. It was returned for a touchdown by the Giants. So, unfortunate there. That play doesn't really bother me at all, especially because the Steelers were able to force a punt on the ensuing defensive drive. But really, in the second half, this defense just didn't get a whole lot done. They had the 2 field goal drives in the second half, and obviously the ending drive in overtime, but for the most part, this team just wasn't moving the ball. And really, I mean that in general. The running game was non-existent to start the game. It got a lot better. They finished with a run success rate of 61%, excluding Ben Roethlisberger's kneel downs. But, not gaudy numbers in the run game. They did get better throughout the course of the game. So, obviously, with the way that this running game started and the way it was last year, the fact that they've had 50+% success rates over the last 3 weeks, I think is a massive victory and should bode well for the success of this running game going forward. Obviously, they're not going to have perfect games. They're not going to look like last week did, but we actually saw some impressive runs, and when I say some, I mean 2 impressive runs by a running back not named Najee Harris. Kalen Ballage had 2 runs for 15 yards, and both of them were successful, so that's a massive success. And on the day, getting an explosive run from Deontay Johnson and the touchdown from Eric Ebron. Happy with the run game and the offensive line's performance in there after the first couple drives in the game, when Seattle was really playing a heavy box with Jamal Adams. So good job for the offense getting that running game going. That is one aspect that the Steelers team needed to become a more effective offense. But there is one other aspect that's going to keep them from being where they want to be on offense, and I'll get to that later. Wanted to point out Ben Roethlisberger's play in this one. 29 of 40 for 229, 1 touchdown, just the 1 fumble, no interceptions, 1 sack. That's not a bad stat line, but his play is uneven right now. And I suppose it's better now than where it was at, 3 weeks ago, a month ago, when he was actively hurting this team. So I suppose that it's better right now. But he's just not connecting consistently enough down the field. And the explosive play, the absence of the explosive plays from this offense is really just not conducive for this team, especially when it's not turning the ball over on defense. And I'm a bit confused with the way they utilize their personnel at the receiver position, now minus Juju Smith-Schuster. We saw the majority of snaps in the slot taken by Ray McCloud. Chase Claypool kept on the outside. James Washington only in for 8 snaps, all of which in the first half. I like Ray. I think he's a fine player. I like him on special teams. I got nothing against the guy, but to me it's wrong, barring injury, which it sounds like there wasn't a re-aggravation of his groin injury. To me it's wrong to not have your best receivers, best players on the field the majority of the time. I'm all for rotating. I think that's fine. But I don't understand why James Washington did not see the field in this one. Washington is a guy that apparently the Steelers are going to be trying to move into the slot to potentially play more snaps there. And, that should be interesting. He hasn't really played in the slot pretty much ever in his career. And remember, in college, he played pretty much exclusively on one side of the field on the outside. So, I don't know. This seems like a really odd way to go about things. I understand the Steelers want to keep Chase Claypool on the outside, and I just don't get that. I really don't. This is a guy that had some of his biggest plays in the Broncos game in the slot, has had some of his bigger plays in the NFL on the slot, or in the slot. I guess I get it because Ben Roethlisberger likes having that deep threat on the outside, but the problem is Chase Claypool is not winning any of those 50-50 balls. He's not creating separation. And when you can't create separation, getting put in the slot allows you to be able to be schemed open, and the Steelers just don't seem to have any interest in doing that. I mean, it worked against the Denver Broncos. Chase Claypool was lined up against Von Miller and caught a pass and went for 59 yards. I don't understand why this team is so obsessed with it when it's not working. I understand the idea of it, and it's worked at times, but that 84-yard touchdown to Claypool against Denver, that was a long time ago. He hasn't won enough of those 50-50 balls. He's out of position. He doesn't do a good job winning those contested catches, and that was his calling card in college. So perhaps the Steelers just want to keep giving it a try because they think eventually it's going to work. I don't know. For now, I think they'd be better off putting Washington on the outside and Claypool in the slot primarily. That doesn't mean you have to always have Claypool in the slot, but again, just 2 receptions on 7 targets in this one. Had that horrific offensive pass interference late in regulation when the Steelers were able to take a 20-17 lead. They had been running the ball successfully, I think, the previous 5 plays before that. I don't hate the idea of taking a shot there. The defense probably creeping up to the line of scrimmage, but man, he has not been reliable except for the game against the Broncos where he was, had most of his production from the slot. I don't know what it's going to take, but I hope, Claypool to me is the most important player not named Roethlisberger on this offense, because Deontay Johnson is the guy that can get open. He's the guy that can be relied upon in pretty much any situation. He deserves a ton of props at this point in the season for having, I think, only 1 or 2 drops to this point in the year, where last year he had, 15, 16? I mean, give the guy a lot of credit. He is the closest thing to Antonio Brown the Steelers have had since he left, and he's a really good football player and really a testament to the late receivers coach Darryl Drake for being able to find a diamond in the rough, if you will. But Claypool, if he can get going, if he can become more of the player that the Steelers and I have hoped that he could be, it could really make a difference for this team, because Johnson cannot be the primary deep threat. Someone else has to do it, and I just don't know. I don't know how that's going to happen, because Claypool just isn't getting separation, and he's not coming down with those 50-50 balls. Something's got to change. Him and Ben need to figure something out. And if the Steelers are so insistent on keeping Claypool on the outside, boy, we need Anthony Miller to come up and play significant snaps on next Sunday against the Browns. He needs to come in a hurry because, again, I like Ray. He's not a slot receiver. He's a special teams specialist that can play in a pinch, and I don't want him on the field more than he has to be outside of gadget plays or decoys. So, Roethlisberger was okay. Again, not completing the ball deep down the field in this one. I believe only 1 pass completed 20 yards or more down the line of scrimmage, or past the line of scrimmage. I'll have to check this out. Overall, just, I don't know. Disappointing is maybe not necessarily the correct thing to say, because, again, what should their expectations be for a 39-year-old quarterback that is dealing with physical limitations and decline? 1 completed pass 20 yards or more down the field, 1 for 5 on the day. Just 4 passes completed 10 or more yards down the field. I don't know, the game manager role is okay. He's certainly playing better at this point the last few weeks than Peyton Manning was in his final season, but I just think that the way this offense operates, they don't really have an explosive running game. I mean, not that the running game has been bad. Najee Harris has played well, and the run success rates speak for themselves, but he was never really a breakaway runner at Alabama. And the only breakaway type of runner they have is Anthony McFarland, who has yet to play a game this year. Now, he's presumably going to be active for this game against the Browns next week, but, who knows what kind of shape he'll be in. Maybe it'll take a couple weeks to knock the rust off. I don't know. But on the day, or on the season, really, Ben is, it's the same thing as it's been the last couple of years. He's not consistently hitting the ball deep down the field, and he's not targeting the deep or intermediate middle of the field. And you don't need to necessarily target the deep middle of the field or, go there very often, but you have to be able to complete plays on the boundary if you're going to do that. And we've seen it happen sometimes. The 2 opening drive touchdowns to Deontay Johnson against Denver and Green Bay. And again, there was a hole shot. That was his best throw, in my opinion. The hole shot on the cover 2 play down the left sideline to Deontay Johnson. And I guess that's where I'm confused, is because I felt like the first half of this game might have been Ben's best game of the year. That whole shot in the cover 2 and the play before that where Adams was running free at him and he gunned it into Deontay Johnson in the middle of the field. He had some impressive plays in the first half, but in the second half, just a ton of throwing short and not wanting to take chances. And I don't know. This team just needs to start completing more deep passes down the field. and the onus is on him and Chase Claypool. I think that's a big part of it. Offensive line, Dan Moore did struggle in this game. He left injured. We'll see what happens starting this upcoming week if he'll be able to play. But overall, offense did a good job in this one. Just one quarterback hit and one sack in this one. So, this offensive line has come a long way from week one. They'll face much stiffer tests, especially next week against Cleveland. But all in all, this offensive line is finally starting to show cohesion, and Zach Banner returning this upcoming week, I don't even know if he'd bother playing him this week because the offensive line, again, finally starting to show the growth that we had hoped we would see. And frankly, after looking so bad the first 2 to 3 weeks, they've done a much better job coming together the last 3 weeks. So they turned the corner even faster than I thought. So big shout out to them. Also shout outs to Presley Harvin and Chris Boswell for continued impressive performance by them. Always happy to see good play from the specialists. Let's move on to some NFL news this week. Wanted to note that wide receiver of the New Orleans Saints, Chris Hogan, has decided to call it a career. He's retired after a 10-year NFL career. Started with the 49ers, was also a part of the Giants organization, then started playing with the Buffalo Bills. I got to see him play in Buffalo a few years. Signed with the Patriots, where he won a Super Bowl. I believe won 2 Super Bowls with the Patriots. Also played with the Panthers, Jets, and now recently the Saints. So congratulations to him. Also, trade rumors heating up for the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes with Houston and Miami. The Houston Chronicle reported last Wednesday that a trade between the Dolphins and Texans could be finalized this week involving Deshaun Watson and presumably Tua Tagovailoa. And I just find all that really interesting. They're downplaying it, but I'm not sure what the Dolphins' play here is. Why would they be trying to acquire a guy when they're 1-5? I mean, do they think Watson can help them run the table so that they can go 12-5 this year? This is a team that needs wins right away, and the time to pull the trigger on this trade would have been weeks ago. But even on top of that, he's still got all of those civil suits regarding sexual assault against him. How can you the guy hasn't even practiced this year. How can you rely on him to possibly change the fortunes of your franchise? I don't even think he'd play this year. So, the Dolphins are in a big mess right now, and Tua's been hurt this year, but I'd just ride it out with him right now. I don't see how you could trade for Deshaun Watson when you don't even know if he's ever going to play football again. Lastly, I wanted to point out that 2 House Democrats, the House of Representatives on Thursday, pressed NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell to provide Congress with the findings of the league's investigation into the Washington football team's workplace and details of the NFL's handling of that probe, trying to pressure the league office to release more information in the wake of these leaked emails that got John Gruden fired and Jeff Pash, I don't think he was fired, but got him into some hot water as well. Someone is apparently blackmailing people. Why else would the information for John Gruden be leaked but no one else? That's kind of what Austin and I have been talking about. Someone is holding this information and is weaponizing it. So, frankly, the only way to take that power away is to release everything. And, we'll see how this happens, but the NFL's trying to keep a lid on it and use John Gruden as a scapegoat. And now, thankfully, due to pressure from the government, who is preparing subpoenas, apparently, the NFL's not going to have much of a choice here, I think. So, it could be really interesting to see. A lot of things can change pretty quickly here if these 650,000 emails get released, and frankly, they should be. I find it incredibly hard to believe that, as Austin and I have talked about, that Dan Snyder's running of the Washington football team ship is anything but clean. I'm sure that there's something else going on there, and who knows what else could be going on. A lot of people could be really nervous about this right now, so credit to Pro Football Talk, too, Mike Florio, for talking so much about it, because this is an issue that needs to be talked about, and it should not go away. So I'm sure Austin and I will discuss it more in the coming weeks, too. All right, I'm going to get to my picks this week. Interesting Thursday night game between the Broncos and Browns. A bunch of battered players. How about Dearness Johnson, former AAF legend with the Orlando Apollos, going for over 100 total yards. I think 160 plus total yards on the day. Running backs are fungible, and unless if they're Najee Harris, no, but really unless if they're Derrick Henry, they are replaceable. Just remember that. The Browns will be 4-3 when they host the Steelers on Sunday. Gonna run through my picks here really quickly. Getting into the 1 o'clock games, we have a battle between the 2-4 Washington football team and the 5-1 Green Bay Packers. Green Bay is favored by 8. All of our lines found on ESPN.com. 8 points feels like a lot in this one, but with Curtis Samuel out in this one, Brandon Sheriff is out as well. Antonio Gibson and William Jackson are questionable. I don't know. I feel like this could be a week for the Packers to win by a couple touchdowns. The Washington football team continues to disappoint me this year. Kansas City Chiefs at the Tennessee Titans, a rematch of the 2019 AFC Championship game. The Titans are going to be missing Taylor Lewan in this game, and the Titans are 4-point home underdogs. I like the Chiefs. I think that they've started to right the ship, even if their defense is not nearly as good as this team probably needs it to be. I think that they'll start picking up games that they really desperately need in this tightly contested AFC battle, or AFC race. The 2-3 Falcons at the 1-5 Dolphins. The Dolphins are 2-point dogs at home. Ugly game. Don't watch this one if you don't have to. The Falcons are involved, so I'm picking against them. You should know that. Panthers 3-3 at the 1-5 Giants. I actually feel like the Panthers are an upset alert here. I know no Saquon Barkley, no Kenny Galladay, no Kadarius Toney, but I don't know. I just have a weird feeling about the Panthers, who started 3-0 but are in a free fall right now. I don't know that the Giants are going to win this game, but I like them plus the 3. I think it should be a close competitive game. Elsewhere, we have the Bengals and Ravens, a 5-1 Ravens team hosting the 4-2 Bengals. Latavius Murray and Sammy Watkins out for Baltimore, who is favored by 6.5. I still like the Ravens to cover. They have absolutely destroyed the Bengals in their last 3 meetings, and I know the Bengals are a better team, but walking into Baltimore, that feels like a difficult recipe for an offensive line that is still not good. So give me the Ravens. Now into the 4 o'clock games. We have the Eagles at the Raiders in Las Vegas. Only one player out of this game, Nick Bowers for the Raiders, who are favored by 3. I like the Raiders to cover. Eagles traveling out towards the West Coast. I think the Raiders will win this one by a touchdown. The Jared Goff, Matthew Stafford revenge game. The Rams are favored by 16.5. Upset of the year right here. Jared Goff going into LA. The Lions will beat the Rams. Okay, probably not, but I will take the Lions plus the 16.5. The Lions have been really close, and I think that they're going to continue to battle, but I have a hard time seeing them beating one of the top teams in the NFC. But, screw it. I'll go with the Lions to win this one outright and shock the nation. Texans at Cardinals, another massive line. 18 points. The Cardinals at 6-0 favored over the Texans at 1-5. Give me those Cardinals to win by like 21 points. They're going to lay a beat down on the Texans, who were competitive early in the season, but just on the struggle bus right now. Really in trouble. The 3-3 Chicago Bears at the 5-1 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa Bay favored by 11.5. I wanted to go Bears plus the points here, but I think Tampa Bay is going to lay the wood here. They've had extra time to prepare for this game as well, so I like the Buccaneers. Sunday Night Football, the 2-4 Colts at the 2-3 49ers. The Niners coming off the bye are favored by 4 points at home. I like the Colts plus 4. After the 0-3 start, the Colts have been a much more competitive team, and they will be missing T.Y. Hilton, but and Trey Lance is not a go for the Niners, so it's going to be Jimmy G back under center. I like the Colts in this one. Carson Wentz has been playing much better over the last few weeks, and I think the Colts will be able to pick up a win in this one and win this one outright. Monday night, the New Orleans Saints traveled to Seattle to take on the Geno Smith-led Seahawks. Yeah, I like the Saints in this one. Jameis Winston can always make things interesting, but this has the recipe for a big win for a Saints team that is favored by 4 in this one. So give me the Saints. Lay the 4.5 points. 4 points here, and those are my picks for this week. The Bills, Cowboys, Vikings, Chargers, Jaguars, and Steelers are all on a bye this week. That should wrap things up for this episode. The Steelers continue to rest as their bye week comes to an end. Following week 7, the Steelers will be back in action in Cleveland, taking on the 4-3 Browns. As always, if you enjoy the show, or if you have any feedback, you have any questions, please email us at strongerthansteelpodcast@gmail.com. Check out our episodes on YouTube under the name Stronger Than Steel Podcast, or on our new home for our podcast, anchor.fm/Stronger Than Steel. Thank you, as always, for listening to the podcast with Austin and John, but just John today. And we'll be back talking Steelers and Browns next week. Until next time, thank you as always for listening to the Stronger Than Steel podcast.
You have been listening to Stronger Than Steel podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and don't forget to check out our website listed in the description below.